There is a lot that is dividing people everywhere nowadays, whether it be, like you said, social media, whether it be political standpoints, whether it be race or gender inequalities. The Shoe Club does kind of act as an antidote to that, because instead of poisoning the mind with hate and harmful feelings and words, it's teaching these students coming through the middle school that it's okay to be open to new ideas and new people, that your own opinions don't have to affect how you live your life, and it certainly doesn't have to affect other people.
Hi, everyone. This is your host, Ken Futernick, and the episode we are recording today will be posted on two podcasts I host because, well, it's really a good fit for both of them. The Teacher Stories podcast is about the impact extraordinary teachers have on their students. Matt Hamilton, one of my guests today, is such a teacher, and you will see why in a moment. The other podcast is Courageous Conversations about Our Schools. In that one, my guests and I focus on ways that educators, parents, and students can build better schools by bridging the political and social divides that often separate them. The story you're about to hear is about that too. Well, first I want to introduce Matt Hamilton. Mr. Hamilton is a seventh grade social studies educator and middle school and high school video production educator at East Jordan Public Schools in East Jordan, Michigan. He recently was one of 5 educators in the country who received the 2025 Horace Mann Award for Teaching Excellence. He was also the recipient recently of the 2025 NEA Member Benefits Award for Teaching Excellence. Mr. Hamilton received these awards for a number of reasons, but the one we will talk about today is a project he and a student started called the Shoe Club. Matt, I want to welcome you to the show and congratulations on winning these awards for teaching excellence.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks for having us today, and I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, and I just want to let our audience know you're not at school today. You have a day off of school, and you had to go find another location. What happened this morning that caused that?
We're ready for spring, but Michigan is not ready for spring as a whole. So we had some storms, and we don't have any internet or Wi-Fi at our school. So we found an alternative location to meet with you today.
Yeah, that's great. I can't wait to talk about the Shoe Club. And but first, I want to introduce 2 other guests we have with us today. Hannah Wyman, you're an 8th grade student at one of the schools in East Jordan. Welcome, Hannah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Hannah, let me ask you a question or two. What do you like to do away from school? Do you have hobbies or do you other things outside of school that you love to do?
Yeah, I'm in the theater program.
Have you had a chance to perform in a play yet at
Yeah.
all?
hmm
What's your favorite role or what have you been in?
My favorite role has been in our most recent production of Alice in Wonderland. I was the Mad Hatter.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that would be my favorite role.
Yeah, terrific. Well, we'll come back to it in just a minute. I want to hear your thoughts about Mr. Hamilton and about this Shoe Club, which is, I think, to some of our listeners, they're wondering what the heck is a shoe club and why would we want to talk about it on this podcast? But you'll find out soon enough. My other guest is Rylan McVannell, who is an 11th grader in the same district. Welcome, Rylan.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Rylan, same question to you. What do you like to do outside of school? Your favorite hobby?
One of my favorite hobbies is it's actually pretty close to that season, but with this weather, it's not the easiest. But I play disc golf, which is pretty self-explanatory.
Well, some people don't know what that is, but it's a form of golf, right? But just explain it just a little bit.
It's pretty much the same thing as golf, except the you're working with special made discs, so they're kind of like frisbees, but they for the record, they are not frisbees.
Yeah. All right. That sounds fun. So, Matt, first say a bit about where you teach. I know it's in Michigan and East Jordan. How long you've been an educator there, and then we'll get started learning more about the Shoe Club.
Yeah, so I've been teaching in East Jordan for 23 years. This is my 23rd year. And East Jordan is a really small community. We have about 60 kids per grade. And our claim to fame is we have EJ Ironworks, which makes pretty much most of the manhole covers around the country. So if you're walking around town and you look down and you see, they'll either say East Jordan Ironworks or it'll just say EJ on it. More than likely they were produced, made in East Jordan here. So it's a blue collar, factory, hardworking town, and it's an absolutely phenomenal town. Great people. We were located about 15 minutes away from Lake Michigan, right on Lake Charlevoix, which is a beautiful all sports lake. And we have a river called the Jordan River, which flows in. So lots of wildlife, lots of forest, lots of water. So there's a lot of things to do with all four seasons.
Let's talk about the shoe club. And when I first saw it, I wondered, this is a school that is fascinated with fashion, but I gather it's not about fashion, right?
No, not really.
Yeah. So how did it get started, and what is it? Then I'm going to ask Rylan and Hannah to talk a little bit about it as well and what it means to them.
Yeah, the history of exactly about 17 years ago, we had a couple tragedies in our school. A young lady was killed on a snowmobile, and then a month later, her boyfriend, she was a freshman. A month later, her boyfriend, who was a sophomore, committed suicide. He didn't feel like he could just be here anymore, and which we lost two students in a really small school, and it was a really dark, hard time for everybody, the teachers, the staff, the community. It was just really difficult. And our principal happened to find this motivational speaker named Mike Donahue, who was just happened to be in the area, and she invited him to our school, and he spoke to the high school. And at the time I was teaching 8th grade. And so then they invited the 8th graders to listen to him. And so it was just a few of us teachers and the 8th graders. We listened to his presentation, and he just had a really great message of hope and of empathy. And within his message, he had, for 10 minutes or so, he brought out this bag of shoes, and he was sharing these stories of these students, how, he's like, this girl here had a, straight A's D1 scholarship to play basketball. But her father wasn't in her life, and she really struggled with that. And so on the outside, she had everything going for her: great grades, going to a great athlete, going to a great school. But on the inside, she was going through some real pain. And then brought out another student who was, struggling, just having some abuse at home, and then coming to school, and then just being bullied and just mean things said to him. And just that message of, if people really understood what the other students were going through, they would just have a deeper understanding of them. And what you were sharing earlier, just about sharing dignity with each other and understanding. And so that 10 minutes of those shoes was really powerful. And the next day in my classroom, we talked about his presentation, and we talked about all parts of his presentation, but those shoes really made a big impact. And then my students, this was just in the beginning of March, and so I'd been with my students for 6 or 7 months, and they all came to my classroom with smiles. And I was relatively, early in my career, and you just figure everybody's happy and everybody has a good life and everything's going well. And then after that presentation, my students started saying, "Hamilton, can I talk to you before school?" And then I had students talk to me at lunchtime, and then staying after school and talking to me and just sharing their stories of what they were struggling with and what they were going through. And for a couple of weeks, I was just hearing, it was just student after student. That speaker just really opened up their hearts, and they wanted to share and get it out. And they felt comfortable with me, so I was there. And then here I am. I can't sleep for a couple of weeks, just hearing all these stories and knowing my students are in pain, thinking, holy cow, what can I do to help these kids? And I couldn't get those shoes out of my mind either, that visual of the shoes and the message of, walk a mile in each other's shoes. And if we all did that, what a wonderful world this would be. And so after a couple of weeks of not sleeping and talking and thinking and praying and everything else, I came up with the idea of the shoe club, and I just started rocking and rolling from there.
Mm. And so you, since then, have been collecting shoes. And so people from outside of the city send you shoes. Is that how it works?
Yep. And a little bit more detail on the club is, when I started it, I wanted to help the students, and I wanted to give them skills and information that they didn't have. And so I didn't want the kids to just simply join the club. I wanted to make it a little bit difficult for them to join the club. So not just anyone could join. I wanted people and students who wanted to be there to be in it. And I wanted them to gain essential skills while doing it. So at that time, when I first started, they had to read 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. And they had to read one of Mike Donohue's books called Reinventing My Normal. And they had to write a paper about each book. And then they also had to write their 10 life goals. I wanted to give them a foundation, some purpose in their life. And when I started the club it was 2008, I thought, you know what, I'm going to start this club. It was March. I'm teaching 8th graders. It's, nearing the end of the year. And if you know anything about middle school kids and 8th graders, they don't enjoy reading particularly. And so I'm like, if 3 kids join the club, that would be great. And if 5 kids join the club by the end of the year, that would be awesome, because they got to read 2 books and write their life goals and write 2 papers and, on top of all their schoolwork and sports and stuff. So, and at the end of the year, I had 28 kids join the club. And the only reason I didn't have more is because I didn't have enough books. And the kids were like, hey, hurry up, finish the book. I got to finish. Who's got the books? And so it was like, holy cow, these kids were hungry. Like they were hungry for knowledge, and they were hungry for some experiences, and to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And so then also I made it when they joined the club, they could give me their shoe, and, they write their favorite quote and they autograph it, and I would hang their shoe up on my wall in my classroom. So yeah, kids were, I remember on that first year, the one of the kids gave me one of his shoes on the last day of school and walked to the bus with one shoe, which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
So after a couple of years of just collecting students' shoes, because ultimately those kids and my students in general are my heroes. And so I have my heroes' shoes on the wall. And then after a couple of years, I thought, it'd be kind of cool to get some people, the Shoe Club is all about dreaming big, setting goals, working hard, and giving back. And if we could get some role models, some people who have went through school, went through life, and kind of experienced the hardships and came out on the other end successful, that'd be pretty neat to share their stories. And so we started, after a couple of years, collecting, inspirational people's shoes too. And so, yeah, we've gotten support from all kinds of people from around the world, actually, like, Jane Goodall, Dolly Parton, Michael Jordan, Steph Curry, Mike Tyson just a couple of weeks ago sent us a pair of shoes that he trained in for his latest fight against Jake Paul, which is pretty neat for the kids. So just, in all walks of life, Vince Cerf, who invented the internet, and, all kinds of people, Charlie Duke, who walked on the moon. And yeah, we have inventors, scientists, Nadia Murad, she was a Nobel Peace Prize recipient. I shouldn't say winner, recipient. So all walks of life, all kinds of, engineers to athletes to inventors to all kinds of people.
Now, when someone sends a shoe to you, do you spend time with the club researching something about the person that sent the shoe and then have a conversation about it?
Absolutely. So the shoes, we say, aren't just artifacts to just display in my classroom. They really represent the stories of the people who wore them. And so we research them, and, we always watch a couple of videos and try to learn their story, because it's every shoe is a story of perseverance, grit, or generosity, whatever it is, whatever they went through. And it's amazing that these students get to see these really famous and inspirational people that they see on TV, and then learn the story behind them. Because we all, typically we only learn about people when they've become successful. We don't get to go on that journey with them through the hardships and the failures and the setbacks. And so these shoes really, when we get the shoes, we learn their stories, and I teach the kids about their story to success. And so the kids know that being successful isn't just luck or just set aside for special people. It's for people who dream big and who set goals and who work hard and who experience failures and who, gain mentors along the way and really work hard to be or do whatever they want to be or do.
Yeah. Well, Hannah, let me come to you. You're a member of the Shoe Club, and did you read the two books? Is that still a requirement for getting in the Shoe Club?
So today, Mike Donahue, who was that speaker that came in 17 years ago, I'm sorry. Him and I reached out to him the following year and I said, hey, this is what I've done with your message and this is what I'm doing. And he's just like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. This is what I wanted a teacher to do. And him and I have become really good friends. And him and I collaborated on a book called Value Up, which is all about teaching kids to value themselves and value others. And so now the students have to read that book called Value Up to, and then write a paper about that and still write their 10 life goals. And then that's to join in seventh grade. So the Shoe Club is for seventh and eighth graders that are building. And then for eighth graders, they have to rejoin as an eighth grader and they have to do 12 hours community service. And then they have to make a dream board. You're 10 times, I don't know how they got this research, how they got the data, but the research shows if you write a goal down, you're 10 times more likely to accomplish it. And if you make a dream board and if you can actually visualize your goals, you're 18 times more likely to accomplish it. So to get into the club as an eighth grader, they got to make a dream board. And the goal is that they hang it up in their bedroom and so they can see, what career they want to go, be a part of, or what school they want to go to eventually, or where they want to travel to, or their family life, just things like that.
Yeah. Okay. So Hannah, we'll come back to you now that I understand what is required of students now. It's a little different than before, but talk about why you decided to join the Shoe Club and describe a couple of things that you've experienced being in the club that are important to you.
I joined the Shoe Club, I would say November, actually, like kind of later fall of seventh grade. I realized that after reading the book, I needed to be a part of it because the book made me realize that I needed to value myself more, and being a part of a club or a group like that, I realized would be very helpful for not only me but other people in school and community members. And I thought I wanted to be a part of that, helping other people.
Yeah. So is there a shoe that's part of the collection that has special meaning for you?
I like Bethany Hamilton's shoe. She is a surfer. She got her arm bit off at the age of 13 by a shark, if you don't know the story. She's just a huge inspiration because she got on the water a month after, less than a month after the attack, and just that fearlessness and determination just was really inspirational and one of my favorites. And another favorite, forgive me, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he's a free solo climber, Alex Honnold. Alex Honnold. He is a free soloist, and I think I like his shoe just because of what he does and how just awe-inspiring and how dangerous it is, but he still does it and he loves it.
Well, thanks for sharing that. We'll come back to you in a minute. Rylan, I want to hear what drew you to the Shoe Club and why it's important to you, and is there a shoe that has particular importance for you?
Well, I'll start off with the first part of the question. So I am a junior right now, and I not really am considered a Shoe Club member anymore. I'm more of a high school mentor at this point. But that being said, I've been in the Shoe Club for the past 4 years. So when I first joined the Shoe Club, I was actually new to the school district. I had just moved from another school, starting out fresh in seventh grade, brand new middle school, didn't know anyone. So the Shoe Club originally, I was planning on it to be a tool where I could meet new people, but it ended up turning out so much more than I could have ever imagined at that point. And I remember when I was touring the school for the first time during that seventh grade open house, there was something different about walking into Mr. Hamilton's room. The ability that he has to connect with people and students is always kind of blew my mind. So the Shoe Club, I did end up reading the book in seventh grade. it's been a hot minute since I read it, so I can't remember all that much. But I can attest to the fact that with the dream board that I had to make in eighth grade, that is still to this day rolled up right next to my bed, and every once in a while I hang it up on my wall. But it is with me to this day, so I found that kind of cool.
Now, when you were getting into the shoe club, did you have to do some community service?
Yes, for eighth grade, I believe it's 12 hours of, yeah, it's 12 hours of community service that you can do. There's a number of ways you can go about it by just helping out in the city, helping out family members. And I think I ended up getting quite a bit of hours, so that wasn't really much of an issue for me.
Hmm. I want to ask you, well, I've still got you, Rylan, something that Mr. Hamilton said, or I read somewhere, and then Mr. Hamilton, I'll ask you about it. But you said that some kids come to school with masks, and behind those masks, in some cases, is real pain. Rylan, have you noticed that that's true among some of your fellow students, that kids come to school and behind the mask that they have on is pain or challenge or difficulty?
It's definitely more of a not much of a light-hearted topic, so I won't try and play it off like it is, but it's kind of crazy. I've never really had much of an issue with that myself. So when I first got into the shoe club, I kind of figured out that that was what some of my fellow classmates were using it as. People can seem they might have everything handed to them, born with a silver spoon in their mouth, but behind closed doors, you don't know what's going on. So it's not always easy to judge someone. It's pretty much just like the saying goes, don't judge a book by its cover. You don't know what's actually going on inside. You don't know how their stories unfolded. And it's definitely changed my perspective when it comes to meeting new people, or when it comes to helping someone out with their emotions. You have to be able to empathize with them
Mm.
or sympathize.
It sounds like the shoe club is sort of a good vehicle for that because you're hearing stories about other people's lives and trying to get behind the mask to understand what their story was. And so along those lines, I want to find out from you, what is there a shoe in the collection that has special meaning for you?
It's a bit of a generic answer, but I'm probably gonna have to go with the first shoe that we got, which was by pro skater Tony Hawk. He was the first one to give us his shoe, and I think that's kind of what set the ball rolling for progressing, I should say, when it comes to what we've done, whose shoes we've gotten. If it weren't for that, who knows if
Mm.
we'd even be having this conversation.
So he was sort of the catalyst for the other people sending
Yeah.
shoes to you as well. Yeah. So Hannah, let me come back to you and ask the same question about what Mr. Hamilton had said about people having masks, and behind the mask, sometimes there's real pain. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, I before the shoe club, I kind of always knew that people had stuff going on, or like I understood that people have their own problems, but after the shoe club and after hearing Mike Donahue speak, that's when it kind of clicked more that people that are very closed in have a lot. And like after we had Mike Donahue come and speak, what, 3 months ago? And I remember just hearing so much from close friends and just that I didn't know, and knowing that someone that you're the closest to has stuff going on that you don't, because they just don't talk about it. That's yeah, that's was very eye-opening and made me realize a lot, and kind of made me not mature, but it made me kind of grow, kind of realizing that there's more than that's not, well, there's more than just what you're going through, kind of.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Hannah. That, there's something that people think is important these days in schools is just focus on the social and emotional life that students experience. And there's some people that are critical of it because they say, it really should be focusing on academics. But the people that are advocates for social and emotional learning say you can't learn academics very effectively if there's stuff going on emotionally and socially that's problematic. And I think your comment, Matt, that all kids come to school with masks of some sort, and behind those masks, in some cases, is real pain. That pain, I have to believe, affects the capability of students to learn and grow and reach their dreams. But talk a little bit about that statement that you made and what you're hearing from these two students, Rylan and Hannah, but other students that you've had through the years.
No, it's very true what you just said. It's tough to teach if you don't understand your students, and for the students themselves, so it's tough to learn when they're sitting there and they're hungry. And I've got stories of kids just that just come to school hungry. They're tired, and as a teacher, you're ready to rock and roll, and you got 25, 30 kids in your class, and you've got your content and your targets you're trying to get through. And then you got kids sleeping or acting up and misbehaving and all kinds of things that, I think every teacher in America has to deal with. But when you start asking them questions and start to understand them, you can empathize with them, and you can, and it doesn't excuse their behavior. I want to make that clear too. I'm not, it doesn't give them an excuse, but then it opens up the door for you to have a relationship with them and to build that relationship. And then you can help them, go through some stuff. And if they're hungry, well, here's some services to get you food, or, why can't you sleep? And what's the issue at home that's going on? And so you can help them instead of just getting mad and angry at them for not doing well in your class. You get to understand them, and then you can help them get the help and the resources they need. So, and again, there's just so, I remember one student, I used to coach basketball for many years, and one kid was an athlete, 8th grader, and I really wanted him to play basketball, and I kept on him and about joining the team. And the first day's practice came along and tryouts or whatever, and he didn't show up. And I'm like, what? So I talked to him the next day, and I'm like, hey, I've been on you, and I really want you on the team. Why don't you show up? And he's like, I can't. I'm like, yeah, you can. You're a great athlete, and I'd love to have you. And he's like, well, I can't. And he's like, I literally can't. And I'm like, why don't you come to my room and eat lunch with me, and let's talk. And so he came to my room, and we just had this great talk. And he said, his parents were divorced, and his mom wasn't, lived downstate, wasn't a part of their life at all. And he lived with his dad, and his dad worked the second shift. So we'll say from 2:00 to midnight or whatever it was. And so he had a younger brother in elementary school, and he says, I have to ride the bus home with my brother, make sure he gets his homework done, and cook him dinner. And then, and then I got to put myself and him to bed and come back and do it the next day. I'm like, holy cow. So you're raising your little brother. Here I was giving him a hard time about not joining the basketball team. No idea that he was raising his brother on after school and stuff. So was I more patient with him and more understanding? Absolutely. And did I have high expectations for him in the classroom? Absolutely, I did. I kept him accountable to his work and his behaviors and stuff, but I was also able to work with him and talk through some of that stuff and get him some help too on the side. So yeah, I think just understanding that kids, not all of our students go home and have dinner with their families is a big understanding for a teacher. And then it's a tough balance though, to have high expectations for your students, but yet have understanding for them as well, and be patient. And then again, I think 23 years too, after teaching for so long, that's been both easier and harder because, you're seeing some of the same behaviors and some same things over every year. And you're just like, let's get it together. But then, these students are going through it for the first time and understanding that as well. So, I think knowing that students come to school with masks, and I think teachers understanding your coworkers in administration comes to school with a mask on too. We all have stories, and we all have things that we've gone through in the past, and we all have things that we're going through now in the present. So understanding your coworkers too and what they may be going through, because you're not always going to agree with your coworkers on things and with students and issues. So understanding where your coworkers are coming from, and again, our philosophy is walking that mile in each other's shoes. So I try to practice that with my students and with my coworkers and administration.
The idea of walking in someone else's shoes is really a statement about empathy, is trying to understand what someone else's life is like from their perspective. And these days I read a lot about the challenges that students face. There's a book that I've read by Jonathan Haidt called The Anxious Generation, and he talks a lot about how social media and cell phones and has caused students to become disconnected from each other and not to understand each other. They can get anxious about what people are saying about them on social media, and it causes a lot of anxiety. And it seems to me that the Shoe Club is sort of an antidote to that. It's a way to come together and say, we're going to try to talk about other people, and the people who wore these shoes or my shoe, in a way that gets people thinking about life from the perspective of others. But can you just talk, each of you, just say a little bit about the way in which the Shoe Club promotes empathy and sort of bridges the divides that we're all experiencing these days?
I think a good thing with the Shoe Club is that it encourages being able to listen to other people and appreciate them for what they are, as a human being, just like anyone else is. You can't value someone based on just what they look like, or maybe their opinions or how they act. I think something that I've learned through the Shoe Club that kind of ties into that is, because of some of the projects that I've been a part of, I would say I'm more open now to hearing other ideas, to talking to newer people, rather than taking a look at someone and saying, I don't like X about them, so I'm not going to even try and talk to them. It's kind of hard though at the same time, because keeping that idea in mind, there is a lot that is dividing people everywhere nowadays, whether it be, like you said, social media, whether it be political standpoints, whether it be race or gender inequalities. So it's kind of hard, and I'm glad that the Shoe Club does kind of act. You used a pretty good analogy there. The Shoe Club does kind of act as an antidote to that, because instead of poisoning the mind with hate and harmful feelings and words, it's teaching these students coming through the middle school that it's okay to be open to new ideas and new people, that your own opinions doesn't have to affect how you live your life, and it certainly doesn't have to affect other people.
I just want to share one quick story for listeners out there. Before we started recording, I was sharing with the three of you an episode we're about to post on Courageous Conversations About Our Schools, that podcast. It was an interview with a guy named Daryl Davis. He's an African-American, very accomplished musician that happened to run into people that were members of the Ku Klux Klan. And through empathizing with them, as hard as that you can imagine that would be for a Black man who is hated by members of the Klan, many of those Klan members ended up leaving the Klan. And I asked Daryl, what are the implications for schools? And one of the things he said is that I encourage kids in the cafeteria to walk across the floor of the cafeteria and sit with other people, because people tend to come into the cafeteria or whatever spaces in schools and they sit down with people that they know or that they have something in common with. He says, I want to encourage people to get up and walk across the cafeteria and sit with other people. And at first they might say, what are you doing sitting with me? But if you say, I just want to get to know you. And so it sounds like the Shoe Club is a version of that. You're getting up, and as you said, Rylan, so beautifully, it's opened you up to listening to the stories of other people that you might not have interacted with otherwise. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that idea that you just mentioned too, the idea of just getting up and even small things like sitting with new people in the cafeteria, that is probably one of the best ideas I've ever heard, because you don't know, even if it is against any opinions or ideologies that you have, for all you know, sitting with that person, they could be going through some tough times. And just by sitting with them, you could be making their day 10 times better.
Hmm.
So by connecting with new people, not only do you get to know them better, but then you are able to empathize more with them and help more.
And I take it that's happened with you. You've done that yourself. And has anyone ever done that with you that you didn't know and came over and reached out and said they want to get to know you a little bit better?
Yeah, that's actually how I made some of my closest friends in high school right now. Was, like I said, I was the new kid in middle school. So that was actually how I made my closest friend group.
That's very cool. Hannah, let me ask you the same question. How does this impact you, this conversation we're having?
Yeah, I can't top what Rylan said, but yeah, the shoe club really makes you take a step back and kind of listen to other people's ideas before you put forth your own ideas. We went to Camp Grayling, one of the biggest military bases, in the fall, and the commander who walked with us throughout the day, he made a comment saying he doesn't care what rank, your age, your gender. He doesn't care about that as long as you can get the respect and respect others. Respecting others is what makes a good leader and person. And
Yeah.
that's also one of the core values that the Shoe Club teaches and what I've learned.
Well, thanks for that, Hannah, and Ryland, for your comments as well. And Matt, I want to come to you as we start to close this down and have you comment a little bit about the bridging impact this has. But also after that, I'd like you, for people listening that are intrigued with this idea, if someone wanted to, at another school across the country somewhere, wanted to start a shoe club, how would you suggest they get started?
First, I want to talk too about what what Rylan and Hannah just said too about the uniqueness of the club and the antidote. That's what we often say, is the shoe club is a solution to a lot of the problems that education and society is facing today. And our mission is, number one, you got to value yourself, and number two, you got to value other people. But a lot of programs out there are just, you got to, don't stop bullying, don't bully, no. But it's like, no, you're not gonna value other people unless, number one, you value yourself. And so that's the book Value Up really helps with that. The first half of the book is all about valuing yourself, and then the second half of the book is about how do you value other people. And it's, again, everything's designed to give our students purpose. So if you have goals, you have a purpose, you have a mission in life. And so, yeah, the uniqueness of the club is, when I started, I realized that schools don't necessarily have a bullying problem or a truancy or a drug or, all these problems. What they have is pretty much every problem we have could be boiled down into a value problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's all based on value. And so if we can teach these kids about value, we can really make some headway in helping these students. So, and again, I'll say too, the shoe club for middle school kids grades are not dependent on whether they can get into the club or not, and their behavior is not dependent on whether they can join the club or not. So I want students who, if they're struggling with their grades, if they're struggling with their behavior, those kids, I love those kids in the club because there's some value issues there. And so that's stuff we can help them with. So there's a lot of unique things about this club that really benefit students and are really unique based off other clubs at the middle school level. And going with that, yeah, if they're interested in starting their own shoe club, we can definitely help them with that and get them some resources and get them started on that path. We'd love to help.
Yeah, well, thanks for making that offer. We'll make sure that we provide a way for people to get a hold of if they want to start it up. And, Hannah and Ryland and people in the shoe club might be able to connect with students in another school if they have questions, or student to student. That is a wonderful thing. And also on our web pages for these episodes, we'll put links to the book. It's called Value Up. Is that the one that students are reading now?
Yep, it's called Value Up, and they can download that for free right off our website, shoeclub.org. So if they go to shoeclub.org, scroll down, they can download it for free.
Oh, fantastic. With that, I want to thank each of you, Ryland, Hannah, and Matt, Mr. Hamilton, I should say, for being part of Teacher Stories and Courageous Conversations about our schools. For those listening, you can find this and all of our episodes of Teacher Stories at teacherstories.org. You can also find all of our episodes about bridging divides in schools at schoolconversations.org. So long, everyone.